Once an exclusive billion-dollar club, but it's getting bigger. There are now about 140 companies started within the last decade that are known as unicorns, the term used to define these high-flying firms with high valuations. Will the unicorn traction hold, or is this a bubble waiting to burst? Joining us right now is the CEO of Shutterfly and President Jeff Housenbold. Jeff, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining. I love your company, by the way. We're going to get into Shutterfly and all the great things that you're doing in terms of pictures and what's out there. But let's talk first about unicorns, because the private market has been expanding and the valuations are going higher. What do you think this tells us?
Well, I think it tells us that companies need to get big quick. There's plenty of sources of funding outside of the public markets, and they're using that capital to invest in sales and marketing to grow their revenue base before profitability and allowing them to go global quicker than ever before.
I think because there's this search for growth. In a zero interest rate environment, everyone's looking for growth, and you've been finding it in the private sector. And what unicorn is a term which came from where?
Oh, a good friend of mine, Aileen Lee, who runs Cowboy Ventures, she coined the term about a year ago, and it's just taken off in Silicon Valley.
And it's basically these private companies that are more than $1 billion in valuation.
Correct.
And why is the private market so popular?
Well, it's difficult to be a public company nowadays. You have a lot of activist investors, you have regulation, you have more costs, you have Sarbanes-Oxley, and CEOs in public markets are often a football in the overall political battlefield. So companies want to stay private longer. It allows them to invest in top-line growth and sales and infrastructure before the pressure of quarterly earnings.
Yeah, look at those companies that we're just showing that are some of the higher valued so-called unicorn companies. Uber at $51 billion, Airbnb. These companies are in the private space, and there's not the regulation, David, in the private space that you have in the public markets, obviously.
That's right. And there's also a greater attraction for potential returns in the public markets. If you have a slow growth global economy, expectations for public returns, public company returns, pretty modest these days. There's a little bit of a trade-off between return expectations and liquidity. How do you balance that in terms of attracting money?
Yeah, it is the key trade-off. And, you know, the overall valuations is also a little bit of a marketing tool for the entrepreneurs, the company, and the venture capitalists who are early stage. And the last money in, they don't really care about what the overall valuation is because they have preferred instruments, they have liquidation preference. And so about half of those unicorns are probably going to go to zero. About a third are going to have down rounds when they do eventually come to the public markets. And about a third, the Ubers of the world who have real business models that are disrupting and disintermediating established economies, are going to do phenomenal. And so it's a trade-off between liquidity, but you're seeing private to private. So the early stage venture capitalists are selling out to late stage investors.
And when you look at the public markets, you still got issues. I mean, like a company, Pure Storage, right? The IPO this week, broke issue.
Pure went out yesterday. They were one of the unicorns, but they finished the day with about a $3.1 billion market cap. They raised $450. Shutterfly is a big customer of Pure, but you see that the public markets are valuing companies at a different rate than the private markets are.
It's really interesting, actually. Tell us about Shutterfly. Instagram, obviously, the popularity of Instagram keeps going up. Is this one of your chief competitors, would you say?
Not really. Instagram and Facebook are actually enabling Shutterfly and driving profits. So as Facebook has come public, Shutterfly has record revenues and profitability year in and year out, as consumers now are using photos as a daily means of communicating. And for those seminal moments, for those really important memories, they're turning to Shutterfly to turn those memories into physical products and one-of-a-kind personalized gifts. And that's why this year we're going to do more than $1 billion in revenue, which I like to think is a better type of unicorn.
Jeff, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Jeff Housenbold there.